Šta je zaštitni znak australijskog vinarstva?
The hallmark of Australian winemaking is quality, confidence and curiosity. So we're very proud of the high quality of our wine. We're the 5th biggest exporter globally of wine, so that tells you that the quality of our wine finds an audience all over the world. Curiosity, we're very happy to diversify, to look for new ways of making wine, to see what other countries are doing, and that's often a characteristic of the new age, of the new world, the new world wines, such as Australian, Chilean, South African and so on. So we're looking always to improve, and we're confident, we believe in the quality, in the appeal of the wine that we make in Australia.
Ako bi Australiju trebalo upoznati kroz njene vinske pejzaže I vina koje ih predstavljaju, kako bi izgledalo to putovanje?
So the journey would start, I think, in South Australia, in the Barossa Valley. There's a strong tradition of winemaking in the Barossa Valley, particularly of red wines. It goes back actually to German migrants who came maybe 100 years ago and brought some of their traditions, and they found the amazing terroir and the quality of the geographic and the soil quality of that part of Australia. So you would start with the amazing Shirazes and other full-bodied red wines that you can find in the Barossa Valley. And then I think you would go to another state of Australia, to New South Wales, to the Hunter Valley. It's a different kind of soil, so it favours different wines. So what we find there is very high quality, some good red wines, but also white wines, particularly Rieslings and maybe Chardonnays. Then you would go to another beautiful part of Australia, which is Western Australia. That's maybe 4,000 or 5,000 kilometres away. It gives you an idea of the size of Australia and the distances that you would need to cover in doing this wine journey that you suggest. And in Western Australia you would find amazing Pinot Noirs, more light red wines, but very high quality ones. Then you would go to another part of Australia which tells you something about our geographic diversity, and that is Tasmania. So Tasmania has a much colder climate, of course, than some other parts of Australia, and that works with different varieties of wine. But again, a bit like Western Australia, Pinot Noir in Tasmania has acquired a very strong following. So you find the wines in Australia are grown in the central and southern states of Australia. We don't grow wines or produce wines in Queensland or the Northern Territory, the hot tropical parts of Australia. But through a journey to discover Australian wines, you would also discover our wonderful country.
Šta je hrabrost australijskih vinara? Sunce, zemljište, stare loze ili hrabrost da eksperimentišu?
Australian wine has existed for a long time, and a little bit like Serbia, to be honest. There wasn't a great focus on super high quality. It was more about producing wine in bulk. So many decades ago, Australia was a big beer drinking culture, and then some spirits, and some fortified wines, what we call port. But in the last 50 years in particular, the quality of our wine has increased a lot. And the secret to that, I think, lies in a few factors. One is education. So we have some world-leading winemaking courses, a particularly strong one, for example, at Charles Sturt University in South Australia, but many others. So through those courses, it's a 3-year degree. People learn all of the scientific, cultural, soil, all the different aspects that go to make a great wine. So that's education. The second is, like I said before, curiosity. So our winemakers will travel the world. They will work maybe just for short periods of time in Bordeaux, in Germany, in parts of Italy, and they will, through that, they will try to understand what makes a good wine, and then they will try and adapt that to the Australian unique conditions. So I think a part of that is a willingness to learn and to change. The other thing is the inherent quality of the soil, of the wines, the grapes, the grape varieties that we have found which suit that terroir, and all these come together to enable us to produce fantastic wines.
U zemlji poznatoj po suncu i sušama, kako australijski vinari uspevaju da održe kvalitet vina uz odgovorno korištenje vode i poštovanje prirode?
Well, Alexandra, thanks. That's a fantastic question. And it talks a little bit about the unique circumstances that we face in Australia, but not just us, many other countries in the world. So I've been here in Serbia since February of last year, so about a year and a half. It's been a wonderful journey for me to understand this amazing country. And as part of that, I've had the chance to travel around the country and to see many villages, many beautiful parts of your landscape. What I noticed was last year, in the summer of last year, there was a very long dry period where there was not much rain, and that affected the crops all over Serbia. So that tells me that the problems of drought, of water shortage, are not unique to Australia. As you rightly say, in Australia, it's an enormous continent, 4,000 or 5,000 kilometres across and equally from the top to the bottom. The central part of Australia is mainly desert, and then as you go further away from the coast all around, it gets drier and drier. We don't have rivers of the same size as the Danube or the Sava. We have smaller rivers, and we need to manage them very carefully. So not just for growing grapes and for producing wine, but for the other crops that we do as well, we have needed to find ways to properly use the water. So irrigation systems, we went away from open channels of water to closed reticulation and irrigation systems. We have like a system where you can buy the water rights. A farmer can buy and can trade the water rights, so it has a value, so you don't use too much of the water. And then we find not just wine but other crops that are suited to a drier climate. So through all these kind of means, we've found ways to use less water and to still enable us to produce all the crops and the wine that we produce in our country.
Kaže se da je jedna od osobina Australije da uvek gleda unapred. Da li se taj duh ogleda i u inovacijama u vinarstvu?
Yeah, we in Australia, we can't rest on our laurels, as we say. We can't just rest on a famous brand, a famous name, as they do, for example, with some of the old world wines in France and Italy and Germany, Spain in particular. We need to continuously innovate to stay ahead of the curve, as we say also. So a little bit like my answer to another one of your questions, we need to improve continuously the education we offer. We need to give our winemakers the chance to see how it's done in other parts of the country. Of the world. We need to, there's always a trade-off between the cost and the quality. So we need to find smart ways of producing high-quality wine at a price that people will be happy to pay, not just in Australia but in other parts of the world, given that we're a big exporter of wine. We need to understand our markets. A lot of our markets, for example, are not just in Europe, but in China, in Southeast Asia, in countries, in the Indo-Pacific. And some of those countries are looking for particular kinds of wine that suit their cultural traditions. So we need to be conscious of that. So it's not just about saying, okay, here's an old variety of wine that suits this particular ground, and generation after generation we do nothing different. We need to keep changing if we want to give people the chance to experience our wine. And
Kako biste opisali karakter australijskih vina?
my character, like I said before, I've been the ambassador here to Serbia, also to North Macedonia and to Montenegro since February of last year. So I've had a year and a half to get to know and to understand this part of the world, and it's fascinating, the history, the culture and the food and the produce. Before coming here, I was the Consul General in Mumbai in India, so very different. An enormous country, a huge population, almost as different as you could be, with some big challenges. And then before that, immediately before that, I was the Deputy Ambassador in our embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan. So that was not so much a commercial job, but more about the strategic aspects and the politics. And my background, as you say, is as a law graduate, a lawyer in a former life, and then a degree in English literature. So what I would say about my career is I have needed to change frequently to understand and reflect on the different countries that I'm serving in. I've needed to have a strong understanding of the interests of Australia, whether commercial or strategic or cultural, in all these different places where I have served. And I think that is the hallmark of Australian wine, the need for flexibility, for variety, and for adaptability.
Koje mesto vino zauzima u životu Australijanaca? Da li je vino pitanje prestiža ili deo svakodnevnog života i kulture?
As I said at the beginning, our consumption of alcohol has changed over the years. In the past, we drank mainly beer and fortified wine or spirits, and now in the last several decades, we've shifted much more to wine. That is partly to do with the nature of the Australian people. So 1 person out of 3 in Australia was born outside the country. 1/3 of the population was not born in Australia, and 1/2 of the population was born outside of Australia or has one parent who was born outside of Australia. Also, we are a country that brings in perhaps 200,000 migrants about every year. And people are coming from all over the world to contribute to Australia, to become proud Australians. In the past, let's say in the 50s, 60s and 70s, many people came from Europe. So people came from Italy, from Spain. But importantly, they came from the Balkans. And according to our census, the last census that we did, around 90,000 people in Australia come from Serbia. Actually, the real number is a lot higher than that, but some people don't tick the right box. So there are Serbians now in all parts of life, prominent politicians, judges, doctors, you name it. And also some are in the winemaking industry. So what happened with these people coming to Australia, they enriched our cultural life, they enriched the way that we enjoy food, wine and many other things. So there is definitely a market for extremely expensive wine, maybe up to $1,000 at the very top of the range. So there are people for whom that kind of wine is affordable. Then there is high quality wine in a middle range, which is dependable, which is reliable, and the quality is high. And then of course, as with Serbia or as with other countries, there's the cheaper wine for people who don't have the means. And sometimes it's about what is the occasion for the consumption of the wine. If it's an important birthday for one of your children, or if it's a wedding, then perhaps you will be buying the high quality wine just to mark that important occasion.